Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is the Real Estate Talk TGIF weekly broadcast. This is number 328, 324 weeks in a row. We've had a few extra episodes, but this is over 6 years, guys. This is a passion I started a long time ago. I started doing this because I saw someone do a really bad job, and I said, I can do a better job, and I can show up every week. I have, and I do, and I will. This is the longest running real estate broadcast in the country. Probably in North America. Not sure about that one, but I know it's in the country. There are others that have been on longer, but they're recorded. This is live. Anyway, everybody, here we are with Jay Doran, CEO and founder of Culture Matters. What is Culture Matters? We're going to find out right after the video. Hit it, Nelson. Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I understand that it's Friday the 13th. I hope no one out there has triskaidekaphobia, but that's okay. That's the fear of 13. I do not. I think 13 is really cool. There's a lot of great people out there that have worn the number 13 in sports. The first one that comes to mind might not be everybody's favorite. It's Alex Rodriguez. He wore that 13 with the New York Yankees, or 3 with the Mariners and the Texas Rangers. But I'm a baseball nut, so that's why I go to baseball right away. Kurt Blefrey, look that name up. He wore number 13. If you ever know who he is, I would buy you dinner if you can tell me who that is. Anyway, here we are. It is episode 328 with Jay Doran. And Jay, I start the broadcast really simply with a question. I ask everybody the question every week, the same question. The question is, what does TGIF stand for?
Is that thank God it's Friday?
It's close. You're very close. Most people would think that, but it's actually thank God it's finale. But that's what it is. That's how it starts. That's what it is. So Jay, Culture Matters. You have a story of where the thought came from, why you wanted to do it. Talk to us all about your journey. And in that instance, you'll also explain what Culture Matters is.
Yeah, so you said, thank God it's finale. I mean, just by going from Friday to finale, there's an idea behind that, right? Yep. There's a potential philosophy. There's influence. It's changing the way that I'm perceiving TGIF. You have an opportunity for me to follow you into something. You're influenced me. Early on in my career, before I knew what consulting was or advisory as a profession, the professional service was, I was doing these things. I was advising, I was problem solving, I was helping. And one day I was in Barnes & Noble and a book popped out at me, just hit me right in the face out of my periphery. And I don't know what it was, the cover, I guess, but I opened it up and it made a point very quickly that this company, it was the Container Store, started because they had a vision to get more organized. And they attributed their results of like higher pay per average, less retention or higher retention rather than normal, to their principles. And I thought, what are our principles? Like, what are my principles? And just fell down that rabbit hole. And it was in the beginning of being in a position of leading team meetings that I think I uncovered or was pulled into the fact that I've always been a teacher. And right, a learner, a student, and wanting to help people succeed and be better. It was in those team meetings that I cut my teeth on the recalcitrant students, the employees that didn't want to hear what I had to say, that I had to win over through compassion and reason, where I was forced to think through my thoughts and take notes and prepare a lecture or prepare something of value that others could help. And then, seeing people kind of wake up and look at things differently, I think gave me purpose. And it just so happened that it was culture, the word culture, that stuck out to me at the time. And that, culture matters. So what is Culture Matters? It's an idea. And that it not only matters, but we could do something about it. So the company, our organization, as an advisory firm, manifested later as a consequence of that idea that it was important, that it mattered, that I could do something about it, that I could inspire a team and get our team excited about something that mattered. All right. What's our vision? What's our mission? What are our values? What do we stand for? How are we showing up at work? How am I showing up as a leader? Where am I failing? So yeah, that was the beginning. It was an insight. It was an inspiration, and going down the rabbit hole to figure out what is culture, why does it matter, where does it go wrong, and so on. And years later, it would become evident. This was over 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago, it became ubiquitous. Yeah, it's an opaque term, culture, but it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. You hear it. And
yeah,
so
you always hear, well, what's the culture of your team, or how is the culture? Did you join the culture? Did you join the team? You hear that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And, okay, what is culture? People. We can make it very academic in the textbooks when they talk about how people, behave and their belief systems and rituals and these, it becomes almost hard to follow the literature, right? It's very technical. It's like, well, what does that actually come down to? People. Do we care about our customers? How do we serve them? Are we working? If we own a company, are we sacrificing equally or greater than our people? Are we engaged? How responsible are we? Are our people able to speak freely? What is accountability? What is responsibility? How do we distinguish between the two? I live in that world, and with founders and CEOs and so on. And I would like to think that my calling would be, what is culture?
So what's really interesting, Jay, is everything you just said. What is this? What is this? What that seems like a book called Cultured Matters with all the chapters.
I love you.
You just did that, right? So if that's an idea, please do it. So, all right. So let's get into what people in the real estate industry hear. I mean, they say, well, we have such a great culture. I say, okay. And I would ask them, great, you have a great culture. I really respect that. I mean, there's some great people at your company, but I would say, so let me ask you a question. How has the culture contributed to your business and your growth to where you want to be? So how should that happen, Jay, in Culture Matters? I mean, look, people say, I love the culture there. Most people are saying, well, I love to go there and have a cup of coffee and bullshit with the other agents, right? But when we're talking about culture in this instance, culture should actually motivate and encourage and fascinate, expedite, you name all the words you want, but that's what it should actually do. But when someone says, I love the culture, I'd never leave here. I've done 3 transactions in the last 12 months. Great. How many do you want to do? Well, I want to do 20. So how is that culture contributing to your business? I mean, I just threw a lot of stuff at you.
I love it.
So hit me with that.
Well, I would like to speak on that component of the fun, or you said what I took from it, like coffee or the water cooler kind of.
Yeah.
If anyone follows me on Instagram, Doran _ the culture man, there's a topic I talk about in one of the videos about beanbags and, foosball and whatnot. Oftentimes it's been said or interpreted that that's the culture. It's about the beanbags and the foosball and the things we could do. No. Those things manifest as a consequence of people actually knowing one another, having gone through adversities together, like where they're actually sacrificing and have aims and desires and visions, and they're working and they people, right, that work together, build relationships organically. They want to do things together that might manifest in foosball or pizza or this or that. That will happen as a consequence,
right,
of the culture. If it's happening as a response to the lack of culture, like the top-down, leadership or the positional leadership is trying to make culture by doing those things, that's actually a sign of the lack of, and it's a response to, and that I would argue be a form of control as a response to the lack of responsibility of ownership. So I'm just giving an example of culture is going to come as a consequence of things that happen naturally when we're engaged in our businesses. And part of being engaged in our businesses is being customer oriented, having a vision of where we could go, being responsible enough to get things done. And part of getting things done is saying no to some things and saying yes to other things. Part of how we do that better is having people like yourself help us, right? Those outside of our business that can help us with accountability so we can be more responsible. But that's where I would want to start the conversation, is that when it comes to culture, there's an infinite amount of ways that one could run a business. It depends, or there's an infinite amount of ways one could run a business. There's lots of reasons why people that work for brands would tolerate let's say a culture they don't like. One would be maybe they want to stay working where they are because they're worried about leaving because they want to make sure their kid has food. Maybe they want to make sure, one could be so responsible at home that it would appear as though they didn't care about themselves at work because they're going to tolerate a culture they don't like at work because they care greater about the culture they have at home. Another type of person might care more about how they feel at work, that they'll be willing to risk potentially not being able to provide at home. Life is riddled with these decisions that we've got to make. So the culture conversation can go a lot of different directions. One thing that's happening in our business culture today that I find interesting and problematic.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, problematic. So would be this overemphasis. I think the overemphasis on employee engagement is actually a consequence of ownership disengagement.
Overemphasis. Let's say that again. Overemphasis on employee engagement is what?
Is a consequence of the under engagement of the ownership, or the disengagement of either ownership or management. There's this because what's happening in our business culture today, the plates are shifting for whatever reason. I'm trying to figure it out, where it's like you hear things the customer's not always right, which is there's a partial truth to that. It's as if we're forgetting about why, what it's like we're focused, overemphasize on employees and underemphasis on the customer, where when that order becomes employee more than customer, it starts to undermine the organization to the customer, which forces the organization to constantly have to react like chasing its tail with the employees. That, I believe, is happening at scale. So for example, the founder of management, Drucker, would say the purpose of the business is to create a customer. Today, it's like the purpose of a business is to take care and coddle and entitle people. People don't want to be coddled and entitled. They think they do. What they actually want is meaning and purpose and food and shelter and money and yada, 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 and leadership and yada, yada, yada. So I know I'm going in a lot of directions.
No, let's hit that one really quick. So look, I will tell you that my kids grew up in the start of the revolution of you show up, you get a trophy. Okay. And a lot of people, these are called, I think the word's millennials, right?
Yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah.
Okay. So dude, check this out, right? So they believe my generation and the generation after us, I'm a baby boomer, no question, right? Believe
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. We believe that we created. No, I believe, since I am one, that I did it, that I created. A lot of parents of millennials don't believe this, but they need to stand up and take the consequences, that we created this bullshit that we think that these millennials are entitled. Okay? And what you're saying is that they're not, they want direction, So hit me with that, because this is really important. A lot of people need to understand, but people don't want to be, pushed. They don't want to be reprimanded. They don't want to be criticized because they're too sensitive. I say bullshit, do your job, or, find another one. Anyway, go ahead.
It's a big question. It's like the pendulum is swung too far one way. So if we go from, let's say, somewhere between BS, right, telling them the truth, BS, right, to saying nothing and giving them another trophy, somewhere in the middle, we're living in the house. Somewhere in the middle there is, hey, what's going on? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Follow me. So here's what I want to pinpoint. It's easier for us to tell people the truth when they believe us and trust us and see us living the truth. So it's hard to hold somebody to a moral standard that we're not living. So if we're a business owner listening to this, or we're a realtor listening to this, like a top producer that has a team, if you get away from selling real estate because you're recruiting, if the 80-20 moves too much in one direction, it's going to be harder to attract top people because you're losing sight of the customer service. So it's like, that's a tactile thing. It's like responsibility has to be modeled, has to be watched, observed, experienced. It's going to be easier to attract and elevate the right people and ask the quote unquote wrong people to leave the building when one is engaged in their business. And in the last decade, probably plus, of the real estate, if we're going to speak specifically real estate, the milieu has been, the narrative has been, and this happens in up markets, let me bring in people versus how many customers can I solve? And there's consequences to that, because now we've got too much people and not enough business, and we can't seem to find, like, basically people that have at the top that have really like become very successful, they lose their purpose as the business grows, because their purpose started in how they solved customers' problems, what they love to do, their passion they had around working with the customers. And now all they do is like moan and groan at people that aren't nearly as good as them, that can't quite figure it out. And those people that aren't nearly as good as them, that can't quite figure it out on their team, resent them for just like telling them to do things they don't do anymore. Because kids don't like to listen to parents, tell them not to smoke while they're smoking. So a lot of it, all you hear in bad times is like, get back to basics and whatnot. All that really means is get back to basics. What that means is culturally is live your values, act out your values.
So I'm going to take that as to one of the things that I firmly believe in, is that stop saying don't do this and live and work by example. By this is what you do. I'll give you an example. You just said don't smoke, right? Okay. Don't drink. Don't touch the hot stove. Wet paint, right? Think about all these things that we say do not do. When you see a sign that says wet paint, what do you want to do? You want to fucking touch it, right? If they say don't do this or don't do that, it makes you want to do it because you don't know why, you don't understand it. Look, personally, I always thought when they said don't do drugs, that was the worst thing to say. Instead of saying don't do drugs or don't do this, let's set examples and let's show people by example what it looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. It's like when I had my brokerage of a long time, I did this thing called MBWA, managed by walking around, right? So I would never tell people what to do. I would make sure they saw what I did, right? And I would always walk around. Anybody that ever worked for me, but they would all say the same thing. Any agent that worked in my brokerage, Dave cares because he always asks us if he can help us. And the question I had for everyone when they came in is really simple. I said it to everybody every day. How can I help you today? And I believe that can breed a culture, but there's also conceited people. There's also greedy people that want to take advantage of that, but you have to set the tone. I will say that I probably failed at a lot of that, but I've learned that setting an example rather than saying don't do that makes a hell of a lot more sense than putting up that wet paint sign. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what did people's faces, what did you, when you asked them how you could help them, what was the response? Even if it was implicit in their behavior, like how did that make them feel? What were the consequences of that?
They made it grew a loyalty, right? It grew a feeling that they never have to worry about if they need something done, that they can always get the help, you know, and all they had to do was ask. Now, there's a lot of people out there, Jay, that won't ask for shit.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of people out there that say, oh, I can do it myself. Look, we're called real estate salespeople are called independent contractors. Okay. We're paid as 1099 employees. We're not employees. Although some litigants and some legal entities will want to sue you as an employee, or I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. But anyway, you know, they want to call you an employee for legal reasons, but you're not. You're an independent contractor. So most agents do know that they're independent, you know. So they know they don't have to do anything, but they know they have to do something. But when you say, how can I help you? They also know in the back of their mind, if they don't know it up front, that they always have support. So support is the number one, in my opinion, support. And that is so many things is the number one thing a real estate agent needs to know that they have. Working for some companies, they say, oh, we give great support. That's a lot of bullshit. I mean, great support. Yeah. Okay. You got an office, have a cup of coffee. That's not culture to me. Culture is a feeling of togetherness that you know you can always get an answer. You can always get some help. The group I work with now, I mean, I need something, I can get an answer. I can get the support. I can get the help. You know, we have systems and tools put together whereby we're able to ask questions, and anybody in the 4 states we're in, as well as, you know, we can't get it there countrywide. The company I work with, we will get answers. There's not one question I can't answer, not one problem I can't solve. That's no BS. That's true. So the culture of what we built and what we have is, you know, let's all work together to help each other make a ton of money. But first, we help a lot of people. So
to answer your question, the order is important. If we're going to, what we speak, that our belief of what the truth that we believe that we share with others is going to land at a higher conversion, the more they respect us and the more that they, you know, we have an actual relationship. And I believe our actions build that relationship as much as our words. So that would be my answer to your question, is that it can be an either or, but I would argue if you take the action and you say, don't do this, if you believe, don't walk over there, or don't work this way with a customer, it's going to land harder. If you believe it's true, tell the truth. It's going to land harder if you're leading in the way that you're describing that you have led in your life. When we take out the actions, or when the organization gets very large, because this happens naturally, where now the people don't see us act and we're now telling them don't do this, we're trying to help them, that can create anxiety. It can create lead to resentment. That's where values come in, by the way, because when the values are clear and written down and used with training, and the people will, the values transcend the hierarchy. Yeah. They transcend the power dynamic.
They do.
So that helps managements not appear top down if they're not trying to be top down. A parent could genuinely say, don't do this, because they genuinely are trying to help the child, but the child may not, you know, for whatever reason, be ready to hear that. And then, but the value, if the child has the value in the family is, you know, stay safe, and associates that. It's a little different of an experience, but
yeah,
that's where values come in. So it's a combination is what I'm saying. And part of my job is to actually listen, observe, become inculcated in the culture, and figure out what variables are out of alignment: story, language, symbolism, rituals, music, and so on, leadership, management, and figure out what's out of alignment, like a mechanic working on a car, or an architect working on the drawings before the house is built, to lower the likelihood of disengagement and increase engagement, which leads to larger profit margins, leads to, you know, higher growth per annum, and which ultimately means, if depending on the strategy, either a higher multiple or a higher degree of working capital to reinvest back in the business. So culture is really, you know, the intangibles that make the balance sheet sing. It has an impact on the valuation of a company. So
culture doesn't mean I've got these tools for you to use. I can get you leads. All this. It doesn't mean any of that, right? But it is supportive of your business. Are there? Look, we all
like tyrannical countries buy loyalty.
Okay.
So tyrannical companies, they're buy loyalty. It could be purchased. Loyalty can be purchased in this world. So like if you look at every country has different governing bodies, ways by which that its people are led, influenced, increase or decrease the likelihood of them staying or leaving. And so if you draw that, look at that analogy and try to look at businesses, there's an infinite amount of ways to govern a people if you have a business.
Yep. And
you have to ask yourself, is this a democratic republic or is this a tyrannical dictatorship? And so there's lots of ways to run. I like the idea of a more open society where, ultimately the leader lives in paradox. They have to make decisions that don't have a right answer or unclear right answer. And so it's how the leaders make decisions and how they live by them and how congruent their actions, their words, and their thoughts are that influences the type of culture that it is. So in a cult-like environment, you'll see different variables than one where it's less cult-like. So anyway, all the nuances is the world I live in to ultimately increase the strategic advantage of the organization. And because organizations become corrupt as they grow in the absence of intervention.
So I want to take that one step further with you. And one of the things that I believe that one of the things that our country's political system doesn't have is one thing. 90% of it doesn't have is integrity. And when you talk about, tyrannical countries can buy loyalty, can buy it. They can't buy integrity. For me, integrity cannot be negotiated. Either you have it or you don't. If you had it, cool, go back to it, right? When it comes to culture matters, when it comes to organizations, when it comes to small teams, large teams, individuals, where does the culture and integrity meet?
I like to look at that as the hero's journey.
Oh, wow.
Are you familiar with Campbell?
I'm familiar with the hero's two journeys.
Ooh, what's the two journeys?
Hero's two journeys is an example used in movies. Actually, the hero's two journeys is talked about in I don't know which book it is by Russell Brunson, who is the owner and founder of ClickFunnels. Talks about the hero's two journeys, and in life we all have two journeys.
Yes.
And basically, when you look at a movie, and most main characters of movies have two journeys. One, the problem at hand that is introduced in the beginning of the movie, whatever it is, and then they wound up achieving that, but they also achieve something personal. They achieve two journeys at the same time. Like if they're an asshole, but they got to do this, this, and this, and people hate them at the beginning. At the end, they're going to like them as a human being, and they also achieved a thing. So there's two journeys there that they worked on.
Yes.
Hero's journey. Talk to me about the hero's journey.
Yeah, so this is perfect. We've always got along, right? So this is why you like these types of things. So I'm very familiar with the literature that Russell's been influenced by. It's from a mythologist who actually left school early and just traveled the world and studied in various cultures. And he was a direct mentor to the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas. This gentleman's name was Joseph Campbell, if anyone's interested in his work, or has navigated across some of the Western intellectuals of the day, like Dr. Peterson or those of that order, have studied this gentleman's work. Joseph Campbell, he's the first to come up with the heroes, or it was part of his thesis. And so if you're talking about that with Russell is
Yes.
making it, he's popularizing it for the his customer base, which are those that can ultimately model or let's say benefit from that psychological thesis in the online space, right? It's selling information because it's essentially an online university. But you're talking about the two problems of the hero. So one, and if we were to analogize that or contextualize that in a business sense, people that are listening to this, they have their own individual problem they're looking to solve. And the question is the broker that they're choosing, their identity, the culture, because that's the identity of the company.
That's correct.
In alignment with their personal identity. And individuals like yourself help people that are vying for the top to get more clear on their personal identity, their vision, their mission, how they live their life, and so on and so forth. How that integrates with the business that they've chosen is extremely important. There are people listening to this that may have at one time their personal identity, if we talk about those two journeys, was in alignment with the company that they worked for. And now it's out of alignment. The company has changed, they have changed, or they've changed, the company hasn't, or the company's changed and they haven't, for better or worse on either side. That's why this conversation always can easily digress into the company's wrong, or the employees are wrong, or this is wrong, or that is wrong. It's way more complex than that, because we're talking about, inner subjectivity, human beings, awareness. We're talking about freaking people, right? So that being said, I was bringing up the hero's journey because I'm more so looking at, to answer your question, how a founder behaves.
Okay. And
how they either mature or don't into a chief executive officer, and what that journey looks like. Because as the company evolves, those that started it either do or don't, or it's on a spectrum. And and then that has a relationship with the business model's evolution, which has a relationship with the marketplace's circumstance. So you see businesses right now in real estate, they're pivoting, right? People are pivoting. Shout out to a buddy of mine, Mark Perkins. He's the best. It's a great real estate company name. It's called Pivot. He's a badass. Works so hard. Amazing guy.
Where's he located?
I hope
Ohio.
Was it Tennessee that I went and saw him? He'll kill me if I say the wrong state. It's in the South. It had to be Tennessee. Oh my gosh, it's Kentucky. He's gonna kill me. He's gonna see it.
I'm going to tell you that he has been a guest on the show.
Yeah, Kentucky.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a culture guy right there. Some of the best time I've spent. I love him so much. So he's the type of guy that'll go to the office before everybody, and then he'll go home, and then or he'll drop you off at 10 p.m. after a day of work, and then he'll go back to the office and work till 3 a.m. He's going. Anybody going along a ride with him is going places. So where I'm going with that, the answer to your question would be, my focus is on that hero's journey, but everyone's on a hero's journey of their own life. And if we're going to make this practical to the show,
yes,
whoever is listening, you have your own, aims in life, in your life and in your business. Are they congruent? Like, are they aligned? And then how does the company that you're working with fit into that? Whether you consider yourself an employee, an independent contractor, whatever you want to call yourself, right. You and me and everybody else are participating in a world outside of ourselves. Even myself as a founder of a business, the owner, I'm still participating in a society. The role that I have with the government, for example, will tell me about, have I not paid taxes in 9 years? Well, that'll show me how I'm, how I'm participating with everyone, whether I own the business or not. We all work for and with someone, whatever we want to call ourselves. We work for and with each other. We are not on an island. We are a social species. And so how congruent are your behaviors, your habits, what you do every day with the things that you tell everybody you're going to accomplish and the things you tell yourself you're going to accomplish? And then how congruent is your behavior with your company, and how congruent is your company with you? It may not be your company that's the problem. It could absolutely be you in this season of your life, and it's an easy scapegoat. It could also be the company, and you're not deciding to leave because maybe, or you're worried to have that conversation with your superior, because what about the consequences? They've shown you time and time again how they treat other people, that telling the truth here is not allowed. And so what, are you going to stuff that inside? You better get a therapist. You better not take that out on your kids. You better not take that out on your partner. You better not take that out on your parent. I mean, that's what happens.
Right.
So I live in this world of, if anyone cares at this point, abstract notions and concepts, and try to help companies that care about money, because that's what they care about.
Right.
How to make more of it in a way, and this is my bias, that's meaningful and exciting. That's my meaningful and exciting. It's like, oh, we're doing something. It's cool. It's fun. And we're making money. And that's the paradox of the money thing. It's like, once you make a lot of it, you can't really spend it. You have to reinvest it, or else you start building like entitled people. And it's a whole complicated thing, but like, it can't just be about the money. And it's fun. Another thing, once you make money, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh, I'm depressed. I don't know. Yeah, because you don't know what your purpose is. You could have made millions in the last up curve or whatever. This has happened like crazy. And so two things are happening to you right now. If you made millions and millions and millions, lifestyle creep. Now, and meaning your life expenses went up and your business expenses probably. Because growth goes against self-awareness. And you may have outshot your identity, meaning you were way more successful than you thought you ever could have been. And so now you have two depressions going on. One, it's proven when people finish their PhD, they get depressed. But yeah, because you outshot your goal's done. You need a new goal. And two, if you're depressed from winning because you need a new goal, and now you're stressed out because your expenses are higher in your business and in your life, you may not even have enough cash to survive. Now you got to like kill all your friends. You got to fire all your employees. I mean, if you're even not a psycho, you like them. So now you got to get rid of them. Like, this is the complicated stuff that happens to people. So I'll shut up now.
This happens, and Jay, this happens to leaders that, they say, okay, they got support themselves, because leaders need support. And here's the one thing that I would say to any leader out there that's building culture and trying to build a business is, you got to be coachable, man. You got to always be open to coaching. And I love coaching. I've had the greatest in the world. That's not bullshit. His name is John Sheplack. Matter of fact, tomorrow I leave.
He's great. Yeah.
I leave for an event tomorrow with John in Lake Tahoe. It's a main event for me every year. But the thing is that, a leader should look for the support. I mean, Chep will tell you that, he's the irrefutable number one real estate coach for leaders, broker owners, broker managers in the world. And he has coaches. Yes, his coaches are a little bit higher than we could afford at this time. I mean, Dean Graziosi is one of his coaches, right? So, I mean, that's pretty high up. But the point I'm making is that the leader can get support with what he needs to do when he's struggling from a coach. The same thing that any single super real estate agent, and a real estate agent that is new, you get a mentor, you get help from somebody. That's being coachable. That's culture, in my opinion. I'm a very blunt coach. I believe if you're going to do the business, you should do the work. If you're going to do it as a hobbyist, so just admit you're going to do it as a hobbyist. Those are actually called part-time agents. But some part-time agents are really, really good. And it's a great deal for them. It's a great thing for them. And they love what they do. Look, I love baseball. And I also love a sport that many people have never heard of or don't even understand. It's fencing, right? I did that in high school, college, and after. And I'm reminded of that because of my move, because I still have my equipment from college and I still use it. Anyway, long story short is that it's important for everyone to understand that they can get support and help within and outside of culture. The one question I want to ask you, though, and how a leader can improve is, talk to me about how important for a leader are we talked about this earlier in the week, accountability feedback loops. Because I think a feedback loop is really, really important for a leader to grow culture, not to initially build it, but to keep it going. Talk to me about that, Jay.
I would like to distinguish between responsibility and accountability. Accountability first to build on. I believe responsibility, the ability to respond, okay, it has a relationship with self-awareness, which has a relationship with one's lived experience, as well as let's say genetic disposition.
Right.
Okay, so that's one thing. Number two, responsibility is modeled. It's modeled, meaning people see it and feel it. It's the senses, the five senses. The ability for me to respond, my team's going to see it and feel it. The customer experience in fulfillment and how accessible that their salesperson is, the company, how honorable they are to them. It's experience. Responsibility is modeled. And the ability to respond has a relationship with self-awareness, which has a relationship with lived experience, genetic disposition. Lived experience, that's a big one because it's like, education and all these things. Okay. So responsibility is modeled. It's experience. Accountability is given in speech or taken in force. It's given in speech or taken in force. We tell the truth. Oh, we're afraid to, 100 million people passed, unfortunately, in the gulags in the East in the 20th century, because people were afraid to tell the truth in Russia. People convince themselves not to tell the truth. People convince themselves not to tell the truth in businesses every day. Force. People quit. All right. People get fired. When great people quit, when they can't tell the truth and they start businesses or they go work for other people. At big companies, they leave to go to smaller companies. People get fired, they ask to leave when, the results, right? Or like some type of like deconstructing social behavior. It's accountability is taken, they're asked to leave. It's part of the responsibility of the organization to protect itself for the betterment of everyone. They ask them to leave. Oh, they don't ask them to leave. They're not as responsible. Well, what happens? Then they stay, right? And then there's all sorts of consequences. People quit, right? Like great people quit. Well, because they can't tell the truth and they're not bought in. Well, what do? They leave countries that are tyrannical and they go to freer countries. Okay. So I'm just trying to set the frame here because in our culture, in business culture, I don't see that people, I don't think we're all operating from the same assumptions. Oftentimes it gets all backwards and confused and knotted up. It's like responsibility is modeled and accountability is given or taken. Now, to answer your question, it's all paradox because success undermines itself. Like, think about it. You and me, we make a plan. We're going to record 100 podcasts together this year. We have a vision of that. Like, because we think, all right, who are we going to have? How are we going to reach out to them? What are we going to give up to do that? Because you can't do everything at once.
Right.
If we execute on that, we're not going to be the same people. We're going to get a different result. What if that result's really good? There's an inherent entitlement in success because now we're entitled to something we otherwise didn't have. Right. We had to be responsible and accountable to one another and the consequences of not achieving that goal of 100 podcasts together. And now we got it and we have the results. We're entitled because we might be able to like celebrate and sit back and hang out. So success undermines itself. It corrupts itself. Growth undermines itself. It corrupts itself. And to answer your question, the having that third party feedback loop. So for example, one of the functions of people like yourself and firms like ours that we work for and with organizations, but we're not inside of the ecosystem. We're outside of the ecosystem. If I was to draw it, in this circle, if you're watching, this is where the CEO lives in hell, their own created purgatory between unexplored territory and explored territory. All the employees and all the responsibilities and the customers, all the potential employees and responsibilities, customers. We're like out here. I can't look at my own. We're like out here trying to help them not lie to themselves.
Right.
And it's a necessary function. One of my advisors, Alan Weiss, prolific consultant of consultants, one of the greatest in the world, 60 plus books. He always says, I think it's Packard that he worked with, companies need guys like us, or people like us, not guys like us, people that do what we do because they choke on their own exhaust. So the purpose that we serve is to tell the truth. And how we do that is we listen, we observe, we serve, we get involved, and we don't succumb to the power dynamics that happen with money and success and all the things that come from solving problems. So that's a lot, and everybody, and in some senses, can help, in accountability, whether it's their family or their community or their country or what have you. Because what is accountability? It's given or taken. It's given in speech or taken in force. How honest am I? What am I willing to tolerate, and why and how? How responsible am I? What do I actually want? Or am I sacrificing accordingly? These are tough things. So people like yourself, help so many people and serve a necessary function, and myself included. And so anyway, that's my my argument for part of it, at least, the distinction between responsibility and accountability. And I hope that answers the question somewhat of like the necessity of feedback loops, because success undermines itself. It unravels itself.
It certainly does.
We have to continue to work. Like, here's something I really believe, and then I'll stop talking. If you're going to start a business, finish it. So like, if you're going to be the leader, finish it. If you're going to sell. If you're going to stay. Your people need you. Your customers need you. And in our culture today, I hear lies, half-truths. Probably people aren't doing this on purpose, knowing the human psyche. They think these things that are not true. You can't have both. You have to choose one. If you're going to start a business, finish it. If you want to go on a vacation, go on a vacation. But like, you just finish what you start. And so you can't have both. And there you go. And culture.
That's cool, man. I mean, if there was one thing you wanted to have people try to understand about how culture is important, what would that be?
Listen to the Culture Matters podcast, because you're watching me interact with my culture. All 259 people that have been on the Culture Matters podcast are my relationships. They're my culture. It's my culture. You've been on the show because we're friends for years, supporting your journey, and you've supported mine when many people did not. The Culture Matters podcast is my destiny. I'm attempting to live the things that I would otherwise teach with words and books, by listening and preparing and asking questions and telling the truth where I see fit. It's a living, breathing community of my culture, my relationships. So I would say pay very close attention to that. You're going to learn a lot about me and about what I'm learning as a student of culture. By 76 of our guests have been on the show between 2 and 10 times. This is like my life on camera, and you're welcome back too.
Thank you.
Many times. Yes. So that would be something that I would say. It's like, experience that and pay attention.
So for everybody that wants to check that out, it's scroll on the bottom. It's the Culture Matters podcast.buzzsprout.com. And you can also check out episode 213, which is when I was on. So that's
it's an amazing episode. And somebody just said hello to us, and I couldn't see the
name. His name is Carl. Carl's been a friend of mine for many, many years. And Carl is also says do or do not.
Hey, Carl, thanks for talking.
He's been a great friend over the years. We met through Century 21. Anyway, Jay, I got 2 things left and we'll be done. The 2 things. Number 1 is a question. The question is, how do I help you grow your business?
The most admirable person you could think of that'd be a great guest for the Culture Matters podcast. I trust your character, and I would want to honor them and build goodwill with you. And that would help.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks for asking. That's very kind of you.
And then last but not least, as everybody knows, I don't know if you do that, but there's a hat coming your way for being on the Real Estate Talk TGIF from RE Skill Builder. I want to thank you so much for being on. We got another great broadcast coming to you next week. We're off to Tahoe this week to the Chet Black Tahoe Mastermind. I hope that anyone that is interested would check us out. And Jay, thank you so much for being on. Please stick around for a minute as we go out. And everybody, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.